But Scott Sandlin is, without a doubt, probably one of the most influential hypnotists. Through his creation of HypnoThoughts and his expertise in the field of hypnosis. And Scott's going to share some of his thoughts after paneling around with 10,000 hypnotists for the last 5 years. So here's Scott Sandlin and 10,000 hypnotists.
Hello. I want to have a fun conversation with you guys today, and it's really the start of a conversation. And I want to be clear on this with some of the stuff that I share. I don't have answers to some of the stuff I want to bring up. I don't have an agenda, and I don't have a solution. But I want to just share some trends and patterns that I've seen. You know, like Richard said, on HypnoThoughts, we have 10,000 members. And Richard, Clark, myself, and another moderator, we approved each person. So we've looked at 10,000 hypnotists, aspiring hypnotists, people interested in hypnosis. And you know, there's that whole Malcolm Gladwell become 10,000 hours to become an expert. And I feel sometimes like I've spent 10,000 hours on that website. I haven't, but 10,000 experiences, 10,000, you know, hundreds of thousands of pages. It's a really big thing. And patterns emerge. And based on those patterns, I started coming up with questions. And rather than guess, the last 2 years in a row, we've put out a survey. We put out, we call it the Hypnosis Census. I was surprised that nobody else was really doing this, but I decided to. And so we asked a whole bunch of other people to put this out as well. So it's a larger sample than just members of HypnoThoughts. And it's for working hypnotists. And the information on it's kind of compelling. And I want to talk about that. And I want to do so from a very specific frame that I'd like to set now. I love hypnosis. I love what we can do. I love the people that we can help. I love the profession. And there are some... Hello? I went away for a second, now I'm back. There are some things that need a little bit of help. And there are some things that need to be addressed in a calm way. And that's what I want to discuss today. And it's going to be an interesting thing to sort of walk the line of rapport with everybody. Please bear with me if I stray too far into an extreme. I'll come back. So I want to just start with a few very simple things. And I want to make sure I get these numbers right. It was just under 1,500 working hypnotists. And the overall theme I got from that survey was fascinating because it supported what I believed, and that is the ethos of hypnosis is the most American of any profession I've ever seen. The ethos of hypnosis is the same thing that I see as the ethos of America, which is, my ignorance is better than your education. This is a very American concept, right? This is the guy who sits in the back of the class and goes, I'm cool, I'm not learning nothing. And that guy's the most popular guy in school. The person who knows the most is considered a nerd and disliked for being passionate. I think we have that in hypnosis, in spades. More than just about any industry, we have a culture based on, I'm not supposed to know that. Nana, nana, nana. And that matters, because I'm passionate about hypnosis. And Richard Clark said something to me. I've known him for a decade. And he said something to me about 7 or 8 years ago that I've always liked. It's very hard to argue that less education is a good thing. But in hypnosis, we have this willful ignorance. And it matters. Here's why. Some just hard data from this survey. And again, it's not just HypnoThoughts members. This is a lot of people, some people who don't even like me sent this thing out. And thank you to the people who don't like me.
I sent it out, Scott.
And Richard Ongard barely stands me, and he sent it out, which was very helpful. 73% of hypnotists see fewer clients than they'd like to. Okay, well, what's that mean? 68% of hypnotists see fewer than 5 clients a week. Fewer than 5 clients a week, which translates monetarily to 68% of hypnotists make less than $30,000 a year. That's hard to live on. That's hard to consider yourself a full-time practitioner, to be proud of it. And I remember being there, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. 65% of hypnotists make less than, 80% of hypnotists make less than $30,000 a year. 80% of hypnotists less than 30 grand. 65% make less than $15,000. This is a profession of people who want to help people, and they can't. They can't because they're not seeing the people they want to help. So I asked why. I mean, how many people in here are licensed mental health care practitioners? Great. I asked them, do you think the average licensed mental health care practitioner is for or against hypnosis? 62% said you don't like us. 62% of hypnotists said the average licensed mental health care practitioner is anti-unlicensed hypnotist. That's what the hypnotists believe. That's our misconception. And none of you have thrown sticks at me. And you know I'm unlicensed. We talked about it on the first day. I asked them why. Why do you think they don't like us? What did 24% say? Jealousy. What does that mean? These people don't like me because they're jealous. I make less than $15,000 a year. I see 3 clients a week, maybe. I'm not paying my bills, and I spent 4 days in a room like this. They must be jealous of me. That's like the nerdy kid who goes home from school and says, Mom, why didn't they pick me in kickball? And she said, they're just jealous of your asthma. I love hypnosis, but we are sitting there just with all these resources being untapped and unused because of willful ignorance. Intentional, designed ignorance based on ego. And hypnotists have an ego just like every other profession that helps people. You know, with doctors, that's the whole God complex that they talk about. And doctors get that. You know, I've talked to a lot of doctors or surgeons who say, rightfully, I should have a God complex. I was an ER doctor in a really bad neighborhood that worked nights. There were many days where I intentionally decided who lived and died. In spur-of-the-moment decisions, I had to decide through triage which one of these people in this car accident was going to live, based on my initial assessment. Of course I have a God complex. Hypnotists get it too. I got it. I'm not saying this is a you guys, I'm saying this is an us. Because I'm sitting in my office, in my little box, alone. And a person comes in and tells me, magically, you've changed my life with hypnosis. I stopped smoking because of you and now I'm going to live longer. I lost 40 pounds. I had chronic pain and now I don't. Of course you're going to get a God complex from that. The difference is doctors talk to each other. They work sometimes in a hospital and see each other. They have longer schooling that discusses this. And hypnosis traditionally has been a very isolated community. And I know what it feels like to be lonely as a hypnotist. I know what it feels like, and that's why I love this time in the profession. We're getting much more connected than we've ever been. You know, with things like hypnothons. You know, with all these people coming in very generously sharing their information, and I thank them as often as I can. I mean, the people who show up and just ask, and then the people who know the answers or opinions and give them and expose themselves to criticism. And an overwhelming majority of the visitors who never type anything. I've looked at the data, I have access to it. And these people show up every week, 2, 3, 5, 10 times a month. They spend 15 minutes on the site and they've never commented. And then 15 minutes on the site at a time, sometimes an hour, because they're just reading and reading and reading, they're not ready to talk. But they want to be part of this community. They want to feel like they're not alone. And in that, we can help get rid of this God complex, this ego, and this cult of personality that has kept us saying, my ignorance is better than your education. So here's some fun stuff. The American Psychological Association, the licensed mental health care practitioners, want us to have more training, right? And we say they're jealous. They're jealous that we have magical powers of hypnosis that they couldn't understand. They're jealous you had to go to school. You had to learn, you had to read a whole bunch of books and take a whole bunch of tests. What a nerd. What a bunch of idiots. They had to go through and actually read peer-reviewed journals and do their best to study other people who had dedicated their lives to helping people. I didn't have to do any of that. I took a bunch of shortcuts and opened a practice. I'm awesome. But now here's the fun thing. You, as an unlicensed lay hypnotist, agree with the American Psychological Association. You don't even know it. You say they're jealous of you, but it turns out you agree with them. Here's what I asked. How much training should a hypnotist have? I asked about 1,500 hypnotists, how much training should we have? And I asked everywhere from 0 training to PhD in psychology. And I said, completely not enough training, all the way up to too much training. There were 5 categories, and I just want to talk about the middle 3, which were almost enough training, the right amount of training, slightly too much training. And I found this section that was the sweet spot. Is 200 hours enough? The largest response was a little bit over a third. And they said that's not quite enough. 200 hours is not quite enough. A big chunk, about a quarter of people, said that's almost enough. They said that's right. A quarter said 200. A little over a third said not enough. Then I went to 500. Is 500 hours enough? A third of the people said, yeah, that's it. A third of the people said 500 hours is about right. And I asked 750 hours. And the largest group was 1/3, and they said that's slightly too much. But about 20% said that's right. When you average all these numbers and you do a whole bunch of number crunching, you look at it, and 77% of people say 500 hours is about right. We think we should have 500 hours of training. And the hypnosis organizations in general are closer to 150. So we agree. We don't have enough training when we get a credential. Our ignorance is more important, is better than your education. This is depicted visually best in my office. The smallest certificate on my wall is from Loyola Marymount University. The largest certificate on my wall is from an organization I never applied to be a member of. They just sent it to me. And it's the size of a placemat. And the only reason, and I have a bunch of others in a closet that I don't put up, I just put it up because when I switched offices, just visually, it was a nice layout on the wall. It just looks nice, so I put it up. And that's kind of what they were going for, I bet. But just that the smallest one is from a university, and the biggest, shiniest ones are from organizations that just send them out. That's how much better their I didn't even apply is. I didn't even ask for it. So, here's what I mean. The organizations are businesses in school, and the schools are businesses as well. And they have this really interesting thing because they've done their homework and their math and they're in business to make money. And they found out that when they make the standards higher and more hours required, less people show up and give them that money. Okay, they can learn from that. They also found out that if they make the tests hard, they have fewer satisfied customers. And they have fewer people giving them long-term membership dues because they don't make the cut. This is a massive conflict of interest. If I say we're throwing a party tomorrow and you're in charge of the guest list, and Paula, I say to you, I'll give you $100 for every person who comes to the party. How big should our guest list be? I had a feeling, right? I think we should invite quite a few people in that case, right? It's just a gatekeeping thing. How can the person in charge of standards be the person getting paid for membership? It's just a really clean conflict of interest. But then it starts getting into discussions. Before I get into those, I want to say one more thing. Let's ask the other hypnotists. Let's ask the hypnotists, let's model. We do modeling. Let's just, in the survey, factor out all the people who make over $75,000 a year. Every hypnotist who said they make over $75,000 a year, I pulled all their information out and looked at what they said. I want to get advice from the people who are doing the work a lot. I want to get the information from the people who are succeeding. What did they do and what makes them different? Now, this is money only off clients. This isn't off trainings. This isn't off products. Non-guard stuff in the back of the room, or this video that's being recorded right now. This thing that you're at, not that. Just seeing clients. $75,000 or more. What do they say? How much training should we have? The only answers they gave were 500 and 750. And an overwhelming majority say 750 hours is what you need. The people who are doing the work constantly are saying what you were promised in initial training isn't true. It isn't 3-day certification, put up a shingle, and make $150 an hour. It isn't you're going to make $200,000 in your second year, don't worry. It's a lie. It's a lie. And they know it. It's marketing, and they look for the exception, and they promote that. And I understand that it's marketing, and I'm not telling people how to run their jobs and market their things, but I'm telling you this data is big. Then this data is consistent with what it was last year as well. Also, I factored out the $75,000 and more. Why do you think psychologists might not like us? Why do you think licensed mental health care practitioners wouldn't like us? One said jealousy. Outlier, okay. What did everybody else say? Too low of training hours and lack of a credentialing test. No credentialing standard. All right, so let's ask the hypnotist. I've done this many times on HypnoTalks, and I've gotten in a lot of trouble and started fights with it. I asked, just hypothetically, just theoretically, what would it be like if we could create a standardized test for hypnosis? What would it be like if we could have some sort of gatekeeping mechanism? And you know what answer I got when I asked people that question? Don't tell me what to do in my office. And I say, when did we get to your office? I'm still in school. I'm talking about the classroom. Can we have a test? And people say, don't tell me how to run my business. Whoa. I got a lot of heated responses. I get hate mail when I ask that question. I get hate mail when I ask that question. So let's change the question. Let's see. Which question? I want to make sure I get them in the right order. Forgive me. Oh, they say this. I say, well, let's just talk about school. Let's just talk about school. They said you can't test hypnosis because you can't use objective grades to determine something as creative as hypnosis. It's too dynamic and interpersonal a process. Barbers have an organized test, and that seems pretty creative. I mean, Jay, you got a pretty interesting haircut, right? You have a different haircut than me, and both of our haircut people took a test. Licensed people in here, you guys took a standardized test. And you guys get to practice however you want. You guys don't practice the same way. But we're told over and over by hypnotists, don't tell me how to run my business. Hypnosis is too creative. It couldn't ever be graded. I don't have to know this stuff. I don't want to know what you're teaching. Where does that ego come from? Where does that ego come from that says we are the profession that doesn't need to have standards? That what we know is more special. It's amazing. And then I found out the answer. It's taught. It's taught. You go to most hypnosis trainings, not most, many hypnosis trainings, and I've been to a lot of them, and they say at the end of it, congratulations, you are now one of the best trained hypnotists on earth. And then they teach another class 2 months later and they say it again. Congratulations, you are now among one of the best trained hypnotists on earth, and you know techniques that are better than my competition teaches. What happened to the people you taught last month and the month before that? Did they get less good? Why is this month's class always the smartest? It's another conflict of interest with marketing and us not having a standard where we're being honest with each other. We're not being honest. And that tricks people. And that means they don't get to help the people they want to help. And really well-intentioned, talented, good people get robbed of an opportunity to really help because of this marketing. And that matters to me a lot. Let's see. People go to these trainings. They spend 5 days in a hotel, and they practice with a couple other hypnotists. They practice with a couple other students that are told how to react, they're told how to respond, and they're embarrassed to give good feedback. I was, you probably were too. All right, break up into groups and try something. How did it go? Oh, you did great. I don't want to be rude to you because we have to go to dinner next. Right? I mean, have you ever done a training, done a practice, and known lunch was coming and didn't want to sit by yourself? So you said the nice thing to the person who did badly? Because you didn't want to hurt their feelings, you were shy. That person now thinks that they have a black belt in hypnosis. And they go out and they open a practice and they don't know. And that's not their fault. They didn't know. You might have done a technique wrong or not understood something. But the teacher wants a happy customer. And the person you were partnered with was afraid to give you the feedback. And so you aren't armed with the tools you need. And I see that all the time. And they come out with confidence. They come out like they are wielding a lightsaber of special, new, powerful hypnosis information that nobody else could have ever learned or utilized before them. And they have massive change in a person who was already told how to respond. And then they go see real people who haven't been demonstrated. This is what you're going to do as the guinea pig. When it's your turn to be the subject, make sure you relax, make sure you close your eyes, make sure you get relaxed, and be a good person. And then you get real people and you don't know what to do. You just don't know what to do. And you don't have the internship, the mentorship, the hours. You know, the whole 10,000 hours to become an expert. How many hours of internship is there in hypnosis required? None. What? How can that be? Something so subjective, something you just told me is an art and creative and subjective and there's no mentorship. That doesn't make sense. So the APA says we're not ready. The American Psychological Association, licensed mental health care practitioners, they say your training is substandard. And we agreed privately in an anonymous surveys. But the organizations don't say that. Somehow, in the whole thing, you know, the people say this, the organization says, everybody says, they're trying to take our jobs away. They're trying to take our jobs. Yeah, Michael.
Even when the APA looks at its own members, they're not referring to psychologists who practice hypnosis. That's why hypnosis is an alternative therapy.
Sure.
What you say is absolutely true, but there's the other side of it. There are many well-licensed psychologists who are not getting referrals from their other peers, from their other colleagues. So there's something else going on alongside of that as well.
I want to jump to that. You're right. So but they say, lay hypnotists say they're trying to take our jobs away. They're trying to take our jobs away. I don't want to work with them. We've got to fight them. They're trying to take our jobs away. What job? You just told me you don't have a job. You just told me you make $7,000 a year seeing 2 clients a month. You just told me you don't have the job you want. And now you're mad that someone's trying to take it from you. That doesn't, it's just fear. It's not logic, that's fear. I have a tiny thing that I'm not willing to put at risk to get something more. I just want this little thing. And I see that from people. Here's what I like their answer is. They're trying to take our jobs. You know what we need to do? We need to make a union. We need to make a union. But we did. It didn't work. You know what we did? We made a second union. We need more unions. Union. How can we have, we're word people. How can we have a word that union that now is separate? Why did our unions not create a union, a unity? We have 2 unions. It doesn't even make sense. How can you do that? It's crazy. 2 unions. We need another one. We should probably have a 3rd or a 4th. We need a 5th. Now, I'm not anti-union. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the concept of let's get more of these things is kind of a silly idea. We have enough organizations. That didn't do it. Let's start with unions. Did that do it? No. What lever should we pull? Raise training hours, that's what they're asking for. Well, no, we're not going to do that. No. We want you to raise your training hours. We want you to learn things about ethics. We want you to learn things about client care. We want you to learn things about, I don't know, basic anatomy, psychology. And we say, well, I'm a hypnotist. I'm not going to use that in my practice, so I shouldn't have to learn it. Right? It's a logical, it's outside my scope of practice. I'm not going to use it, so I shouldn't have to learn it. I'm just going to be a stage hypnotist. I'm not going to do clinical work. I shouldn't be required to learn it. That's the same thing a 14-year-old says when he doesn't want to do his algebra homework. I'm never going to use this, so I shouldn't have to know it. How is our industry's logic on par with a 14-year-old? And we're still getting away with it. What? I told you I was going to walk the line of rapport on this. Please, I'm going to get us back to the happy stuff. Actually, I'm going to skip that thing because it'll make you hate me.
Do it.
No. Once I have to fractionate a little bit right now. I'll come back to it. We'll go through the Mordor, we'll come back to the Shire, and we'll be happy and all that. Okay, this idea keeps us separate from each other. It isolates us from each other, and here's why we do this to each other. I had a hypnotist down the street from me. Less than a year of training. Less than a year of experience. Came by, we met for lunch because he moved into the building near me. He said he was an instructor with less than a year of training. Less than a year of experience. I said, cool, what do you teach? He says, I teach people how to run a full-time private practice. I said, have you ever done that? He said, nope. I said, you're teaching people how to do something you've never even tried to do. He said, yep. I said, that's a terrible idea. And he did not like my answer. But he asked, and I said, you really should know how to do this stuff. He said, no. I asked him a couple of hypothetical, very basic questions. What if a client comes with this? What if a client comes with that? What if a client says this? What if a client's parent says this? He goes, I don't know the answer to any of those questions. I said, well, what if one of your students asks? He goes, I don't know. He had never come up with the idea of, coming up with an induction. He was amazed at the idea that you could come up with stuff outside of a script. It had never been taught to him. I said, look, dude, you seem like a nice guy. You got lied to, you got ripped off by an instructor. I know his name before you even say it. You should go back and demand your money back. But that's up to you. What I would like to say is, don't be part of that problem. At the time, this was a couple years ago, I didn't have any school, I didn't have any training that I could sell him. I took him back to my office and I gave him a stack of books. I said, here's a stack of books that you've never heard of. Here's a couple of DVDs Richard Nongard has mailed me. I'll give all of these to you for free right now if you promise to read them. And don't teach your class in 2 months that you just told me about. Don't teach your class, actually read. He turned me down and put on the class. And he's still teaching, he's still an instructor. I've sent him 2 emails saying, look, dude, I'm not trying to compete with you, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm saying, please don't do that, as a nice guy. He said, you don't own hypnosis, you can't tell me what to do. And he's right. Another hypnotist with 2 years of training, was not too close to me, had a family friend who had a very simple issue, like stop smoking, that kind of thing. And he said, hey, you're close to Scott. You're a family friend, I'm not going to work with you. I'll send you to Scott. Woman comes into my office. So I said, hey, yeah, this person referred you, you want to stop smoking, cool. And she said, I don't want to stop smoking. I said, okay, keep smoking. She said, well, no, I kind of want to do that, but what I really want is to work on this issue. I really want to work on these issues. And maybe we can do smoking later, but this is an emotional thing that's important to me. I didn't want to tell my family friend because I was embarrassed. Okay, so let's start working on that. Let's start working on that. So we had this session, and then the hypnotist calls the family friend, hey, how was that session with Scott? We've only met a couple times, all this stuff. And what'd you guys do? What were the techniques? Just being an interested, well-intentioned family friend. And she told him. And it was not anything that would be related to stop smoking. You know what he did? He said to her, get away from that guy. That guy doesn't have a clue what he's doing if he's doing that. And she didn't come back. I called her because she no-showed for an appointment. So what happened? She said, I was told if you're doing that, then it's unethical. I said, wow. Okay, well, I'm sorry. He then called a couple other hypnotists and sent emails to them, some of my friends, and said, Scott Sandlin's a hack. This guy doesn't know anything about hypnosis. You send someone for a stop smoking session, and this is what he pulls out. Now, I'm not saying this about me or that guy. I'm saying that we don't cut each other slack. We don't cut each other slack. We're so separated because my instructor taught me this. And if you're doing something different, then you're against the norm. Now, maybe I did the wrong technique. I don't care. Fine, I sucked. I don't think I did. But I'll concede that. Even if I did something wrong, he didn't give me the benefit of the doubt with his family member. He didn't say, well, you know, I sent you to Scott with the best intentions. Maybe he's up to something. Maybe you should talk to him. Or he didn't think, boy, Scott had a bad day. He called other hypnotists and said, Scott's bad. Where does that come from in our industry? Where does that complete lack of support come from? People who are here to support others. We have these feuding tribes. I'm a member of the American this. Well, I'm a member of the International that. I'm a member of the ABC organization. I'm a member of the DEF organization. I trained with this magic instructor. That guy's a sucker. I trained with this woman who's amazing. And we get into these ego-based things about my training was better because we were told that during our training. You are now one of the best trained hypnotists on earth. You are now ready and powerful. And if you're really ready, you can sign up for my advanced training next month. And based on that, we think we actually do have better training than the person next to us. We believe it. And the great work we do with our clients feeds that ego and separates us further from each other. That's why I love this time in hypnosis. That's why I love right now. That's why I love hypnothoughts. We are able to communicate in a way that we couldn't before. You know, I was a member of the Yahoo groups and a lot of the message boards, you know, a decade ago or more. And they're cool, but they're text only. There's no pictures. There's no personality to it. And there's such a greater richness and depth. You know, with the Skypes and the video chats and the webinars and all these things, there's a richness to these relationships that's less isolating and hopefully, I think, allows us to respect each other more and trust each other more in the discourse and hearing repeatedly different schools of thought. And you can hear, you know, an example is Kevin Cole and Roy Hunter had this wonderful, respectful disagreement a couple months back. You know, Kevin obviously being more interested and aligned with NLP, and Roy understandably being more aligned with parts therapy. And they had this a discourse that was respectful and great, and they went back and forth on this, and you could just look at that, and you could see two people sharing ideas. And you could look back and see, this is where they're coming from, and this is the kind of information they have. And up until now, we haven't done that, and that's what's kept us separate. So we've got all these clinical studies. We've got these doctors saying we're great. We've got Oprah and Dr. Oz and Andrew Weil saying they're pro-hypnosis. We've got Tiger Woods and Tony Robbins. It's a great time for hypnosis. It really is, and it's cool to be a part of. I mean, we've got our technology, our communication, all those things. We've got all of these people in this buzz. We've got shows like The Mentalist. And we've got Darren Brown in the UK. We've got all these things that gets pop culture opening up to us. We've got all these celebrities saying they stopped smoking with hypnosis. And we're doing the exact same thing we've been doing for 50 years, treading water. Because we don't have this foundation of respect for each other and respect for the work. We've been calmed out of that and we've taken too many shortcuts. So you come up with these ideas and people have these discussions on hypnothoughts and they're shot down, but I just want to bring them up. Not because I think any of them is right or more valid, but just because I want to say them. What if we became Like chiropractors, they got licensed. People didn't like them and they learned how to take the tests. Or what about optometrists? They're real specialists and they just police themselves and they have their own organization and people refer to them and they know what they're for. What about acupuncturists? You know, they got the whole traditional Chinese medicine thing. That seems pretty creative and it seems like there's a lot of decision making going on there at the moment. What about massage therapy? That seems a subjective thing and they figured out licensure. What about any of those? I'm not saying we need to be licensed. I have no idea. To be honest, I'm ignorant about this. I haven't been in that room. I've had generic discussions, but I don't know what the outcomes would be. I don't know. You know, we have people like Michael Eller who've been in rooms that would be a better person to ask that question to.
So just very quickly,
Please.
chiropractors are licensed, but they're second-class citizens. There are no chiropractors in the military. You won't find them in hospitals, generally speaking. The insurance industry is auditing them and suing them. So they're under the gun. Many of them, if you ask them, would you be a chiropractor again, based on their experience, they'd say no. They're very unhappy and stuck. Optometrist is a wonderful model. They seem to be quite successful. They seem to be having their own niche with great respect. So I don't know that licensing is the answer.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think licensing is the answer either, but just looking at those four as examples, and there's plenty of others. Yeah.
Here's my concern. Like chiropractors, massage therapists, name the organization. Do we really want to become an exclusive club? Emphasis on the word exclusive. Or do we want to become more inclusive?
It's a good, okay, so I want to say it again for the people in the back in the recording. The question is, do we want to look at being a more exclusive club or being a more inclusive club? And I would say right now we're just a club.
Yeah.
And we're actually a whole bunch of different clubs with different tree houses saying my tree house is better than your fort.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is either. And I'm not saying we should be exclusive or inclusive. And again, this is about starting a conversation that I hope happens continuously for the rest of this week and then online and over the phone and in person. Yeah, Larry?
Being a crybaby, which self-admitted crybaby,
Okay.
I complain that a lot of my inbound clients, the first question is insurance. So for my economic interest, I would take any test that would encourage an insurance company to reimburse a client. And if the insurance company isn't reimbursing my clients, there's no personal value for me to take the test.
There's really civil economy issues. Yeah, I mean, there's economic motives and all that.
But then
Michael,
again,
yeah.
medicine is moving away from insurance. You'd be amazed at the percentage of doctors going into a cash business who feel that insurance has destroyed their ability to practice medicine.
They can still submit, the patients can still submit and get partial reimbursement. Doctors are leaving networks.
Right.
They're not, the insurance company is not leaving doctors.
So this is exactly, these are both two great parts of this discussion, and I want them to be opened up and not resolved. Yes, Paula?
I'm a perfect example for what you're saying. I became, through training, through attending classes, an advanced Ericksonian hypnotist probably 10 years ago. I didn't know squat. I'm in private practice as a psychotherapist, and I make a good living doing that, but there was no way I could comfortably implement hypnosis. But I had the advanced degrees on my wall. I didn't start using hypnotism in my practice until last year when I came to this conference, and this is where I learned.
Sure.
But I had the diplomas,
You had all the pretty pieces of paper and none of the substance.
and people would ask me, "Oh, you do hypnosis?" No, I don't implement it.
And this is a perfect example of, because of ethics. If she said her training by her standards was substandard, she wouldn't feel right doing something that she felt unqualified to do if she had other tools to help that client or patient. And now that's a big thing for the other organizations. They say, okay, well, we had a couple members go to a bad training. Well, let's not approve all this stuff. And they throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's fair. I mean, when you're talking about patient care, sometimes you go on the conservative route. Doc was going to say something.
You know, you talk about the training. I'm going to talk about the training on, say, the medical side or even the psychologist, psychiatrist side or social worker side, that you have to go to classes and get your CEUs every year. But some of those classes aren't worth 3 cents on a dollar.
Of course.
So, I mean, we still got to figure out how to make this business, this profession, because it is a profession, to be recognized not just by Dr. Oz and Oprah, maybe not by the insurance companies, because I think the insurance companies today are basically making doctors, as Michael was talking about. We want to get away from it because I don't get paid by the insurance company unless I make a diagnosis. If I don't make a diagnosis and I don't do it properly, I don't get paid. So it's easier for me to say, well, Scott, I know it's going to cost you $1,200 if we bill it through the insurance company, but if you pay me cash or put it on your credit card or 4 payments, I'll do it for $400.
Yeah, the whole thing is such a complicated, we've got a lot of hands, we only have 3 minutes. And I know this is a conversation that there are a whole bunch of thoughts and a whole bunch of responses, and I'm glad for that. I want to finish with one thing, and then Richard's going to say something. Or do you want to say something?
Fortunately, we can continue this discussion when we post the video on Hypno.
This video is going live on the internet today, okay? I want to get this video out, and I want to get people discussing this. And this is the kind of thing that gets discussed when you go to a conference, so show up next time. You missed it.
That's the great thing about Hypno Thoughts, is that the conversation never has to end. And that gives people a forum for really exploring in depth these ideas. That's really the
Last week, one of the discussions on Hypno Thoughts on the main page that was getting a lot of traction was a discussion that was started by Gil Boyne. He's been dead for well over a year, and his discussions are still active on the site. But here's why I'm hopeful. Here's why I'm really hopeful that actually, even though we're not all on the same page, we can be. The skills that we learn in hypnosis and NLP. We are trained and have a lot of experience eliciting values and eliciting goals and eliciting strategies. And we're good at recognizing what is working and what secondary gains are keeping us from reaching our goals. We are good at motivating people. We are good at inspiring people and helping them overcome things that they thought were impossible. Last night you were very scared to walk on fire, and then you did it and you were thrilled. And you were awesome to watch, by the way. Thank you. I was standing sort of by you with a lot. Yes, absolutely. I don't mean to embarrass you. I was standing sort of by you, and we were looking at this, firewalk thing, and you were talking yourself in and out of it. And I heard you. I was like, I want her to walk, but I'm not going to push her, and because I'm not that big a jerk, and I know that breaks a lot more rapport. So I walked across the fire, and then I'm on the other side of this fire pit, and I can't go get you or talk you into anything. But I was hoping for you, and I was talking to Richard, and I was, being an idiot, doing my thing, and then all of a sudden I heard your voice again from the edge of the thing, saying something that you were ready to go, and you walked across, and you were so happy. That is such a cool thing. I mean, sincerely it is, and that's what we get to see clients do. And we get to see clients overcome things that they said were impossible. And there's that cliche, what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. What seemed impossible becomes inevitable. And with the skills we have to help others overcome something that seems impossible, with the skills that we have to utilize values and emotions, what if we used those on our own industry? What if we recognized what secondary gains were there? What if we recognized which values had become counterproductive? I want to end this with a really personal piece to you, which is a suggestion and a challenge, and just an idea. 5 years from now, somebody you love is going to need hypnosis. You don't know what the problem is, and they're not going to ask you for a referral. They're going to go to some hypnotist for something they need help with. What kind of training do you want that hypnotist to have? If you don't have that training, You need to go get it, because somebody's loved one is going to come see you tomorrow. If you don't have 500 hours, go get it. Go get 500 hours. Because the industry says, the working members of the profession say 500 is a good number. If you don't have that, go get it. And the voice in your head saying, my training is better, my experience is better, my other experiences and knowledge means I don't need it, that is the ego that everybody else is saying, and that's the problem. If you have a school, you're an instructor, and you offer courses with a certification for under 500 hours, please rethink that. Please rethink that. I'm not telling you how to run your business. I'm telling you that hypnotists are saying 500 is the right number. And if you are a person doing, as a school, as an instructor, what the industry wants, that could be good business. If we change the paradigm, expectations, and model. If we change that, doing it right would be good business. So get that lie and that ego of looking for shortcuts out. Hold yourself to that standard. And then start being inclusive and supportive. And listen to the people who you disagree with on this issue. Because it's very complicated and it is not black and white. And let's have a respectful conversation about this. Let's stay calm about this. And let's hear each other like we do with our clients. So that's my time. And
Why don't you take the next couple of minutes and talk about the curriculum and what you're doing?